You probably knew that the Trapper's spikes on his back were placed there intentionally by the entity in order to make him submit to its will. But you probably never saw him rebelling against the entity, as this is not explained anywhere in his lore. Well, the only time we could see the Trapper fighting against the entity is in the intro cinematic for DbD Mobile, a cinematic which will possibly be gone in the future once the servers of the game die out. The Bell of the Wraith was not given to him by the entity. Instead, it was given to him by his father during the Nigerian Civil War in order for Wraith to use this to warn his village from danger. However, the design was significantly more friendly than the one in the realm, and that is because the entity took the bell, imbued it with magic powers allowing Wraith to become invisible, and gave it a more aggressive design with a skull. Despite what the name Hillbilly might imply, as well as his physical condition, the Hillbilly is one of the smartest killers in the cast, as he was able to operate mechanical farm equipment by himself in order to keep the Coldwind farm running, and he also learned how to use and modify his chainsaw all by himself. In the original description of the perk Tinkerer, where the Hillbilly still had the name The Crooked, it talks about how Hillbilly is more intelligent than he looks like. Not much is known of the nurse husband other than his name, which was Andrew Smithson, and the fact that he worked as a lumberjack, which is represented on the plaid flannel add-on for her. The only visual appearance of her husband can be found in the charred wedding photograph offering for the Asylum realm, as well as one chibi charm from Tome 6 where the nurse is holding him. So canonically, we only saw her husband as a chibi figurine. A very big misconception in the community is the fact that Myers entered the realm uninvited, which is not true and simply a misunderstanding of the Benedict Baker quote regarding him, where it says that Myers was not someone who went unwillingly into the realm. However, that just means that Myers did not resist coming inside, which was unique for the time as all the rest of characters were captured by the entity. But nowadays, we have various characters that did enter the fog without resisting, like Ghostface or Trickster. Even Sable, a survivor, entered the fog intentionally, so this is not exclusive to Myers anymore. Despite what her visual design and her name might imply, the Hag is one of the youngest killers in the cast, tied with Spirit and the Legion. However, her lore is really poorly explained. On her bio, it is stated that she lived in a secluded village, but her tome shows her as a student in a public school, so her exact age when she was captured by the cannibals is unknown. Did you know that the Doctor is technically connected with the Dredge? This is because the Doctor's mentor is Otto Stamper, the man behind the cult of the Garden of Joy who ended up manifesting the Dredge into reality. Despite how powerful and knowledgeable this man was, he would end up meeting his demise by the hands of the Doctor, who would leave him in a vegetative state in Larry's Memorial Institute. The lore of the Huntress explains who her mother was, but there isn't much known about her father. However, thanks to the tome lore, we know that the Huntress was very fond of her father, and that he would end up being killed by a bunch of sadistic soldiers, which is the reason why she hunts them and considers them less than animals. If you want to see a family portrait with the Huntress mother and father, it's found inside the main building of the mother's dwelling map. A lot of the killers in DbD are being manipulated in order to sacrifice the survivors in the realm, or straight up forced to do so. The Leatherface is the only killer, however, who is being manipulated by the entity using fear. He is extremely scared of it and wants to do his best. In fact, the Beast Marks add-on hints at the fact that the entity straight up punishes Leatherface whenever he underperforms. So the next time you outplay a Leatherface in your matches, know that canonically he will get punished by the entity. In fact, with the new update, this is further reflected on the description of his default outfit. Freddy Krueger was the first killer to have supernatural powers before being taken into the realm, as all of the other killers with supernatural powers by this point, like Wraith or the Nurse, were given one by the entity. So, in the cases where the original characters are very overpowered, it is explicitly stated in Freddy Krueger's lore that the entity will modify the powers of the killers it takes in order to nerf them in some aspects and buff them in others if it's required. So, the explanation as to why the Resident Evil cast cannot beat the Legion, or why characters like Sadako do not disintegrate the survivors, is all explained since the introduction of Freddy Krueger. And while the entity is completely a nightmare for some characters, for others, it is their salvation. That is the case for the pig, which in the DbD universe got saved by the entity after she was shot in the neck by Jeff, the protagonist of Saw 3. Without the entity's intervention, we know that canonically, she would have died right there. Something that I found weird is how the clown's default cosmetic is not a clown outfit like the rest of his cosmetics, but instead it's a ringmaster's outfit which is also not fit for his size, as explained in the cosmetics description. This is explained in his bio, as he used to steal the clothes and makeup from the other performers until one day he accidentally left a victim escape, which ended up with him having to travel all over America in order to not be found. Did you know that originally the spirit was not the one the entity was planning to take? It was her father instead who was being manipulated by the entity in order to make him a brutal killer, just like it did with the Houndmaster or with the artist. However, during her dying moments, the emotions of the spirit were so intense that the entity decided to choose her as a means to feed on emotions, and Spirit got a second chance, now stuck in the realm. Out of all Legion characters, the only character that we don't know the surname of is Joy. Frank Morrison's full name was revealed on the bio of the Legion. Julie Kostenko's surname was revealed on Tome 3, which was dedicated to her, and Suzy Lavoie's surname is revealed on the charm from Tome 11, which contains her high school ID. Hopefully our boy Joey will get a tome this year. In the vast majority of cases, the prestige cosmetics for the characters heavily imply that the blood in them is from their victims, but this is not the case for the Plague. On her prestige description, it says that the blood comes from vultures that she eviscerated possibly for some entity-related ritual, and the organs of the vultures are also used as part of the incense of the censor of the Plague. Considering the characters behind the mask in the Scream movies, many might assume that the Ghostface we have in DbD is just a normal guy who decided to be a psychopath, but this Ghostface might be one of the most messed up and professional characters out of all of them. Danny Johnson, the man behind the mask, had a father who was a war veteran, and he used to train him as well as tell him stories from the war times. Ghostface is physically very capable and not sloppy at all, as he prepares his attacks with weeks in preparation. The DbD Ghostface would canonically be a top 3 Ghostfaces in the franchise without any entity boost. The Demogorgon seems to be able to supernaturally adapt in the entity's realm, changing its body composition to be more brutal. On the Twisted outfit, it is explained that the Demogorgon became more modified by the fog the longer it stayed on the realm. And also, the Geomutation cosmetic explains how the Demogorgon also got weird rock and goop growths all over it, possibly happening the longer the Demogorgon stays inside the portals. The Oni's Memento Mori is not a random burst of rage as other Memento Moris might be, but it's more of a statement. Before finishing the survivors off, the Oni will open their mouths in order to take out their tongues. This is something the Oni did to a lord who disrespected him before he was taken by the entity and called him an Oni. And since that is the name he's associated with in DbD, every single survivor called him like that. In Deathslinger's lore, it is explained that after shooting Bayshore with the spear gun, the only reason he was not executed and instead placed on a Hellshire Penitentiary was because Bayshore actually survived the attack as he mended himself from the deep wound status effect. However, if you take a look at the Deathslinger, you can see that he has marks as if he were hanged once and survived. This is mysteriously not explained anywhere on his lore, not even on his cosmetics or the recent tome. Despite what many people think, as they say Pyramid Head is disobeying the entity or he is stronger than it, his bio does not agree with this at all. In it, it explains that after completing his task, which was most likely the last fight against James, where he would end up stabbing the pyramid with the spears, the entity offered him a new job in the fog, giving him a new meaning for his life once again. So, in other words, Pyramid Head is not working against the entity, it is literally obeying and working for it. The Blight's add-ons are by far some of the most interesting add-ons out of all killers in the game, and along with some licensed killers as well as the Dredge and Singularity, the only add-ons that have connections to other characters already in DbD. In the case of the Blight, he was able to acquire the Plague's Bile, which he distilled with a mixture of chemicals in order to not be as potent, and he also somehow was able to enter the spirit world for a moment in order to turn ordinary salt into the Umbra salts, the spirit world being the place Wraith and Nerfs enter in order to use their powers, and not to be confused with the ethereal plane that the spirit enters. As you may know, Victor died before he was taken into the entity's realm, and he was revived by it in order to give Charlotte a reason to kill survivors in the fog as a means to protect Victor. But a detail that is unnoticed is how the entity physically modified Victor in addition to giving him a new life, twisting it as stated in the backstory. If you take a look at his head, you can see that he has an extra eye on the side of his head, and for some reason, the extra eye detail also went into the Junji Ito collection, only for Charlotte instead. Despite having no supernatural modifications by the entity outside of the ability to use the main event, the Trickster is one of the only killers that is aware of his condition as a pawn for the entity, as in his bio, it is stated that he knows millions of eyes are watching him. In the lobby, before going after the survivors, you can see that he directly blinks at the players, unlike the other original killers like Skull Merchant or Deathslinger, who know someone is watching, but not where or who exactly. Did you know that the Nemesis is one of the youngest characters out of all killers and survivors in the cast? The Nemesis, which is one of the many bio-organic weapons, was created in a laboratory in Paris by the Umbrella Corporation, and was deployed only months after his creation in Raccoon City in order to exterminate any remaining STARS members. In other words, he hasn't had a birthday yet. It is heavily implied that the Cenobites arrived in the entity's realm not by an invitation of the entity, but because it manifested the lament configuration inside of it. Once a survivor decided to fiddle with the box, the Cenobites were summoned. The problem of this character is that their lore is extremely limited, so not much is known outside of this fact. The artist is one of the weirdest cases for a killer in DbD, because based on her backstory, there is no reason as to why she would end up sacrificing survivors in the entity's realm, but the true reason is that the entity was manipulating the artist from the start. According to a massive reveal in Tome 12, people connected with the entity knew that the artist was able to see things that nobody else could, and then express them in art. The entity was always connected with her, and the biggest giveaway is the fact that there are no crows in South America, yet she always sees them. The Onryo's blighted skin is one of the weirdest cosmetics in terms of lore, and this is mainly because for this cosmetic to exist, the Blight had to inject her with a syringe, which means that she had to be captured at some point, which is once again weird because she can demanifest at will. What is worse is that she is the only killer in the game who physically does not touch anyone, as all her attacks and abilities are telekinetic. She is by far the strongest killer power-wise who got blighted, and it's unknown how this was even possible. And talking about the blighted serum, Albert Wesker is the only character outside of the Blight who took the blighted serum and injected it on himself in order to see what would happen if the serum interacted with the Ouroboros. Out of all blighted characters, he's also one of the only ones that didn't get heavily modified by the serum like it did with Blight or Legion, showing that he is capable of controlling the infection. The Dredge is able to manifest objects as well as bodies out of the traumatic memories of its victims, and this is where the cosmetics come from. For example, the crab cosmetic is taken from when one of the followers of the Garden of Joy killed another one with the shell of a crab, or the deer cosmetic, which was taken from the memories of a young girl who found the rotten body of a deer in the forest. Anything that causes intense bad emotions for humans can be turned into a reality by the Dredge. Something that is not clearly explained in the lore of the Knight is why are the guards so creepy and inhuman looking, as if they were reanimated from the dead. The Carnifex, for example, has various heads ingrained on his belly, and the jailer has a mangled face. The knight himself also seems to have very bad skin as well as various wounds, but this can be explained by the battles he fought. So this leads me to think that maybe the guards in the entity's realm are not real, but manifestation taken from the memories of the knight, which would explain their ghostly powers. Just like it was the case for the artist, and considering that many works of fiction are manifested by the entity in other universes to become real, it is very possible that the father of the school merchant was manipulated by the entity in order to create the manga Soñadores Sombríos as a prediction of what Adriana would become, putting her in the same situation as the artist, in that both are killers created for the entity by the entity the moment they were born. This might be the reason her father left her, as he was seeing images of what she would eventually become. Did you know that the very weird and asymmetric body of the Singularity, that one character obsessed with being elevated and perfection, is not something that he designed? You can even see on the Rift cinematics that the original body of the Singularity allowed him to have super speed as well as strength, capable of dodging bullets from up close. Well, before being taken by the entity, Gabriel outsmarted him one last time by making him burn due to a canister of fuel, causing him pain for the first time. Instead of rebuilding it, the entity decided to keep the Singularity with the broken body, potentially to fuel his rage and hatred for humanity even inside of the realm. If you thought the Nemesis was already crazy young, you will be very surprised to learn that the actual youngest character in DbD is none other than the Xenomorph, since the bio confirms that this Xenomorph is the exact same from the very first movie, and it was taken just as it was outplayed by Ellen into being sucked by the vacuum of space. This makes the Xenomorph be less than a day old, completely beating any potential future character in the game. Chucky's bio could potentially reveal something very messed up. As we know, due to legality, all survivors in Dead by Daylight are of age, as they could not show children doing the acts that happen in the game. However, according to the bio of the good guy, the reason why Chucky entered the fog in the first place is because he was chasing after Andy, as he wanted his body, but Andy disappeared in the fog. If this is taken literally, this means that Andy, a small child, is wandering around in the entity's realm. Just like the Dredge, the Unknown is the second killer that has no backstory attached to it, and instead it tells the story of another person. In this case, it talks about Olivia, a paranormal investigator student who wanted to see if the Unknown's urban myth was real or not, and just as about she was to find out, the entity decided to intervene and steal the Unknown for itself. This makes the Unknown the only killer which canonically has fought and resisted the entity before being taken in, which is not the case for the vast majority who were simply taken by it through the dark fog. The Lich is also another killer who resisted being taken by the entity. According to his bio, at first he resisted being taken by it into the new realm, but later on, after seeing all the amazing things inside of it, he became curious and wanted to know more, so he let himself be taken by it. The spell that Vecna recited in order to enter the fog might be a very similar spell to the one Ash Williams accidentally said before he was taken himself. Now, Vecna thinks that he will master the entity's magic and harness it for himself, but according to the description of the latest cosmetic for him released during Chaos Shuffle, it seems like this Vecna is trapped here for all eternity. Dracula might be the killer with the most amount of favors given to him compared to anyone else. Dracula was not manipulated by the entity nor tortured into submission like is the case for many of the killers in the game. He was also not stolen randomly, as he was saved by the fog during the Battle of 1999, where he would end up meeting his demise by the hands of Julius Belmont, but additionally, his powers were barely influenced by the entity, as he is still capable of using the flame pillars and transform to creatures as he wishes, and he doesn't have the mark of the entity like Vecna does. He even gets to keep the massive castle in every single map he goes outside of licensed ones, because copyright is stronger than the entity. And finally, did you know that it is fully possible that the Houndmaster knows who the clown is? In fact, she seems to know who a lot of the survivors are, as whenever you perform a Memento Mori on any of the original ones, including Nicolas Cage, she will have voice lines exclusive to those survivors. One of those voice lines is the one referring to Jake, where she says she will give his fingers to a good friend of hers.
I'll take those fingers for a pound.
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed these absolutely useless bio lore fun facts about every killer in DbD, and let me know if you have one that I didn't mention here. As always, thank you for watching and have a nice day.